rifles that were unsuited for trench warfare. The trenches of the Western Front of the First World War were an unforgiving battlefield, where even the slightest disadvantage could prove fatal. Into this hellish environment, many nations sent their troops into battle with standard-issue rifles that were unsuited for the unique conditions. These are a few of those weapons. Germany's Gewehr 98. This may seem an odd choice to describe an unsuitable standard-issue rifle, as Germany's Gewehr 98 is widely regarded as one of the finest rifles of the war and possibly one of the greatest weapons ever produced. The Gewehr 98 was a replacement for the Gewehr 88 and was created by firearm manufacturer Paul Mauser.
Have you ever wanted to step into the shoes of a nation's leader during the tumultuous era of World War I? That's exactly what Supremacy 1914 lets you do. In this free online PvP strategy game, you get to lead a real country and guide it through the trials and tribulations of war. You're not alone in this journey. You'll be up against up to 500 other players in real time in games that can last for weeks. That's almost as good as watching Simple History all month. The units you command are straight out of the pages of history, and the decisions you make could mean the difference between victory and defeat. Whether you're a warmonger or a diplomat, Supremacy 1914 has got you covered. Declare war on your neighbors or form alliances to tip the scales in your favor. But what I personally love about this game is its commitment to long-term strategy. Every move counts. You can seamlessly transition between PC and mobile within the same account. If you're excited as I am and want to jump into the action, then click the link in the description. You'll get an exclusive gift of 15,000 gold and a month worth of premium subscription for free. But hurry, the offer only lasts for 30 days.
One of the primary design features that made the weapon famous was the bolt assembly. The receiver was heavier and stronger than earlier rifles, and the bolt head was secured in place with 3 lugs, a feature not seen on previous bolt-action rifles, making the Mauser 98 robust and reliable. The Gewehr 98 had an internal magazine that held 5 rounds of 7.92 by 5.7 cartridges. These could be loaded either individually or with stripper clips that allowed for faster reloading. The weapon had an effective range of around 500 meters, though this could increase to upwards of 800 meters when fitted with the proper optics. The Gewehr 98 was accurate, even at these ranges, making it ideal for sniping and precision marksmanship. The rifle first saw action in China during the Boxer Rebellion and gained popularity among its users. It became the standard-issue service rifle for Germany during the First World War, and would eventually find service for many other nations, including Turkey, Spain, and Israel, among many others. The robust and reliable design features were an inspiration for many other firearms, including the American Model 1903 Springfield and the Japanese Arisaka Type 38/Type 99 rifles. Variants of the rifle are still in production as sporting pieces to this day. In spite of these benefits, there are some features that made the Gewehr 98 unsuitable for the trenches of World War I. The first is the design of the bolt, which, although it was reliable and well constructed, was difficult to produce, which increased the production cost of each weapon. A far larger drawback, however, was the length of the rifle. The Gewehr 98 is a lengthy 49 inches long, with a barrel length of 29 inches. This allowed the rifle to shoot accurately at long ranges, but in the close confines of the trenches, it was often more of a liability than an asset. To compare, the British SMLE had an overall length of 44 inches, which was much more maneuverable in the cramped conditions of a trench system. To exacerbate this, the bayonet was an additional 20 inches long, in excellent length for open ground, but not at all suited for the conditions on the Western Front. After numerous complaints by soldiers, the bayonet was reduced to a more manageable 10 inches later in the war. Updated models of the Gewehr also took the length into account, and the Carabiner 98A was developed, which had an overall length of 43 inches, which was much better suited for trench warfare. The Carabiner 98A is not to be confused with the Carabiner 98K, which would be Germany's standard-issue weapon of the Second World War. Berthier rifle. In the 1880s, French soldiers were equipped with the Lebel Model 1886, a weapon that was far too cumbersome to be used by cavalry. French authorities looked for a more compact weapon for mounted forces. The resulting search led to the development of the Berthier rifle. Designed by railway engineer Adolphe Berthier, The first versions of the rifle were short carbines, only being made into full-size infantry rifles in later variants. The reverse from the usual course, where a long rifle is shortened to a carbine. One advantage that the Berthier had over the Lebel was the use of a vertical internal magazine, as opposed to the Lebel's tube magazine, which stored rounds horizontally, which prevented the Lebel from being shortened. With such an emphasis on the maneuverability of the rifle, the cost came in the form of magazine capacity. The Berthier only held 3 rounds of 8x50 Lebel, the same as its predecessor, a far cry from the 1886's 8 rounds. This was actually not seen as a major issue. Only a decade before, single-shot rifles were the norm, and cavalrymen did not mind the limited magazine size in order to avoid protruding magazines, which could be an encumbrance on horseback. The first versions of the Berthier went into production in 1890, with subsequent variants being manufactured in 1902, 1908, and 1916. Most were produced by state-run factories, but a number were manufactured by the American company Remington. Both the Lebel and the Berthier were in use by French forces at the outbreak of World War I, with the Lebel being the standard-issue rifle and the Berthier being given to cavalry, colonial troops, and other auxiliary forces. In combat, the limited magazine capacity of the Berthier became apparent. Even with fast-loading clips, the 3-round magazine was inadequate compared to its contemporaries, such as the 8-round Lebel and Lee Enfield, or the 5 rounds of the Gewehr 98 or Springfield 1903. In protracted firefights, the Berthier was woefully unsuited. In order to fix this shortcoming, newer models of the Berthier, designated the Model 1916, were developed with an extended 5-round box magazine, which protruded from the underside of the weapon. This undermined the original intention of the rifle's design, making it more awkward to use while on horseback. However, by that point in the war, the mobility of cavalry was no longer a concern. The very nature of industrial trench warfare made the Berthier an excellent weapon for an outdated method of fighting. The Ross Rifle. At the turn of the 20th century, the Canadian government requested extra Lee Enfield rifles from the British government to equip its soldiers. Britain refused, citing supply shortages. As a result, development began on an indigenously produced rifle for use by Canadian forces. Designed by Sir Charles Ross, the rifle was a straight pull bolt action, inspired by the Austro-Hungarian Mannlicher rifle. Shortly after it was shown to Canadian officials, a deal was reached where Ross would supply the Canadian military with the weapons. Production began in 1903, even though the rifle never underwent proper testing. Over the next decade, the Ross rifle underwent many updates to its design, and by the outbreak of World War I, the Mark III was the standard-issue service rifle for Canadian forces. The Ross rifle was chambered in .303 British, the same as the Lee Enfield, housing 5 rounds in an internal magazine. It was accurate up to 600 yards, more accurate at these longer ranges than the Lee Enfield, and many Canadian and British snipers would use the weapon to great effect. Canadian First Nation sniper Francis Pegamagabo used the Ross to rack up his impressive 378 kill count. While an excellent precision rifle and a popular sporting piece, there were many limitations to the rifle. The most obvious was the length, measuring in at 52 inches, making it unwieldy in the close confines of the trenches. This was the least of its problems, however. The bolt mechanism of the Ross rifle was loosely attached and would occasionally fail. Due to the straight bolt design, this would occasionally send the bolt assembly flying backwards after firing, severely injuring or even killing the user. These events were rare, and the frequency possibly exaggerated, but it did contribute to the weapon's poor reputation. More commonly, however, was the woeful lack of reliability the weapon demonstrated. The bolt was sensitive to any fouling, particularly the screw threads that operate the bolt lugs. If these became contaminated with dirt or dust, something unavoidable in the trenches of the Western Front, the bolt would refuse to open or close until the fouling was cleaned away. Dirt or mud on the ammunition would also cause jams, rendering the weapon unusable until cleared. Jams were so common that one frustrated Canadian officer stated that, "It is nothing short of murder to send out men against the enemy with such a weapon." The weapon gained such a reputation for unreliability that Canadian soldiers would often abandon the rifles, replacing them with the Lee Enfield whenever possible. By 1916, the limitations of the Ross rifle were apparent, and it was pulled from frontline service. Sir Sam Hughes, Canada's Minister of Defence and staunch supporter of the Ross rifle, would be forced to resign his post after insisting the weapon be used by Canadian forces. By the autumn of 1916, Canadian troops would be armed and equipped with the British Lee Enfield, and would use them for the rest of the war, with the Ross relegated for specialist roles and training purposes.
Supremacy 1914 is a free-to-play online PvP strategy game that places you at the helm during World War I. Your strategy, your battles, your world to conquer. Now this is the time to dive in. Click the link in the description to receive your exclusive gift of 15,000 gold and 1 month of premium subscription for free. But be quick, this offer is only available for the next 30 days. Choose your country, start your engines of war, and fight your way to victory. We'll see you on the battlefield. Sign up now and receive a unique starter pack available for only 30 days. Act fast and start your path for victory today.